Welcome back, everyone. Before we dive in, make sure you drop your thoughts and the lessons you took from this story in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's get into it. My name is Corey, and I am 26 years old, born and raised in the United States. For the past 8 months, I have been dating a 24-year-old woman named Jasmine. We met through a dating application, exchanged a few messages, and the conversation took off. Our first date was coffee in a downtown neighborhood near my apartment. And from the moment she walked in, white blazer, box braids, and a clean half-up, half-down style, a bright smile that put me at ease, I thought this could be something real. Jasmine worked as a social media consultant. She explained on our second date that she helps small businesses set up Instagram accounts and drafted content calendars for them. Usually I charge $200 per client for the setup, she said while stirring her tea. It is not glamorous, but it is honest work, and it looks amazing on a portfolio. I nodded and told her I respected the hustle. At the time, that felt entirely true. From the beginning, I paid for everything. It was not because she asked, not at first. It was a combination of how I was raised and what I believed about partnership. If I invite someone out, I cover it. If I can afford to be generous, I choose to be generous. Coffee dates, dinners, movie tickets, a weekend trip to New Orleans, and another to Chicago, concert tickets for an R&B artist she loved. Every time the check came, Jasmine would reach for her purse and give me a look, and I would say, "I have it." She would smile and say, "You are the best," the way someone might announce that the sun came up again. Back then, I took it as gratitude. I work in information technology support at a company that builds software for hospitals. My salary is $72,000 per year. I live by a simple budget that lets me pay rent on time, contribute to my emergency fund, cover my car payment, and still enjoy my life. I cook most weekdays. I go out on weekends, but I have limits. I am not wealthy, but I am stable. Jasmine lived with 2 roommates in a nice part of the city. She always had new handbags and the latest phone, and when I met her out, she often wore something from a brand that made me pause at the price tag. I assumed her business was doing very well. Last Tuesday, Jasmine texted me a screenshot of a new restaurant that had just opened in our city. The chef was a television personality who had worked in Philadelphia and Los Angeles before coming here. For 2 weeks, she had been posting about it on her stories. "We should go opening weekend," she wrote. "It will be unforgettable." I looked up the menu. Appetizers began at $60. Entrees were $150. There was a special tasting menu that cost $500 per person, not including wine. I called her and said, "Jasmine, that is out of my budget right now. We could do a nice dinner elsewhere, but I cannot do $1,000 for a single meal." I said it calmly. I did not expect a problem beyond mild disappointment. Jasmine paused, and then she said, "I did not realize you were struggling financially." I said, "I am not struggling. I just did not spend $1,000 on food. It is not practical for me." She said, "My ex would have made it happen. This is embarrassing." Then she got off the phone. 3 hours went by without a message. During that stretch, I tried to keep working. I fixed a printer for one department and recovered a corrupted spreadsheet for another. I was in the middle of explaining why a password would not autofill anymore when my watch buzzed. A friend of mine sent a screenshot. It was Jasmine's Instagram story. The story read, "Why do men who are not financially stable even try dating? If you cannot afford to treat a woman properly, stay home and improve your situation. This is embarrassing." She did not tag me, but did not matter. Her circle of friends knew she was dating me. The comments began gathering under her main post that day. There were phrases like, "Know your worth," and "Men cannot keep up with a real woman," and "I always judge by the first 3 dates. If he spends less than $200 on the first one, I am done." The thing is, those were not private whispers. They were public declarations. I had been paying for everything for 8 months, quietly, happily, and suddenly I was a man who was embarrassing because I would not drop $1,000 on a random dinner. I looked at the ceiling in my office and let the feeling wash over me. I did not want to argue. I did not want to beg her to take it down. I wanted accountability. So I opened my banking application and went back through 8 months of transactions. Restaurants, coffee shops, ride shares, movies, concerts, hotels, an overnight rental in Houston for a quick trip we took in the spring, flowers I had sent to her apartment after her grandmother's surgery, groceries for nights when we cooked at my place. I captured screenshots of it all. It took 2 hours. Then I opened my notes application and did the math. $6,427. I opened Venmo. I sent Jasmine a request for $6,427. I said to public. In the description, I wrote, 8 months of dates, dinners, movies, rides, and trips. Since I am too financially inadequate to date properly, here is your half of our relationship expenses. Thank you for clarifying my financial status. I did not send a message. I did not call. I put my phone face down and went back to work. The aftermath was almost immediate. Within half an hour, Jasmine's best friend, Tanisha, called. I did not answer. Then Keisha called. Then Amber. Then Jasmine called 14 times. I ignored them all. My phone lit up with message after message. Jasmine texted, "What is wrong with you? Take it down now." She followed that with, "This is outrageous behavior, and you are doing this over one dinner, and everyone can see this. Answer the phone." I did nothing. The public Venmo request began drawing comments. Leon, my closest friend from college, wrote, 8 months, and he covered everything. Incredible patience. My coworker Calvin wrote, "This man kept records. That is just responsible." There were strangers who said, "Not the itemized relationship invoice," and others who said, "Fair is fair." Jasmine's friends try to neutralize it. Tanisha commented, "This is manipulative. Making it public is financial harm." Amber said, "This is small-minded energy. A real man would not keep track." Keisha added, "Imagine being petty because your girlfriend wants to enjoy an excellent restaurant." Something unexpected happened. A cluster of strangers began responding directly under those comments. One wrote, "Financial harm is insisting someone pays for everything and calling him inadequate in public when he declines a $1,000 meal." Another wrote, "So he should go into debt so that she has photographs to post." One more said, $6,400 in 8 months is a low-end used car. The request had over 300 likes within 2 hours. Someone took a screenshot and shared it on a large public forum. It began to circulate. I stayed quiet. Jasmine showed up at my apartment that evening. I saw her image on my door camera, the designer coat I gave her for her birthday in January, the Michael Kors bag I bought for our 6-month anniversary. She rang the bell twice and then knocked. I did not open the door. Through the intercom, I said, "Hello, Jasmine." She said, "Corey, I know you are home. Your car is here." I said, "Are you here to pay the request?" She said, "Open the door. We need to talk." I said, "Pay the request, and we can talk." She stood there for 10 minutes. She cried. She raised her voice. She said I was being cruel. My neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, came into the hallway and asked if everything was all right. Jasmine told her I was being abusive because I would not let her in. Mrs. Thompson shook her head. She said, "He does not have to let you into his home. That is not abuse. That is a boundary." Jasmine pressed her lips together and left. Later that night, Jasmine posted a notes application screenshot on her story. It said, "Since someone wants to count dollars and make it public, here is the truth. I have given this man 8 months of emotional labor. I listened to him talk about work every day. I helped him with his wardrobe. I spent time making him look good in front of his friends. I decorated his very plain apartment and taught him about wine. I elevated his life. But sure, let us discuss dinner money. Some of you do not understand that a woman's presence is the prize. The audacity to request money from me like I am a stranger and not someone who improved his entire existence. I am done with men who are financially inadequate and cheap." I took a screenshot of her note and decided to do something I knew was petty. I posted a single story, an image of her public professional profile that listed her as entrepreneur, social media consultant, with her business website. On that website, she had 3 client case studies from the past 12 months. I did the basic math any reader could do. The caption said, "Interesting to hear about upgrading my life from someone whose business seems to have earned less than $3,000 last year, but who owns roughly $10,000 of designer goods. The numbers do not add up. Still waiting on the Venmo payment for the lifestyle I apparently could not afford." My phone blew up. Messages arrived in clusters. A cousin sent a laughing emoji and then called to tell me to be careful. Leon texted, "She cannot win on facts if the facts are not with her." Calvin wrote, "If a situation is unfair, Documentation is not cruelty. It is clarity. Strangers weighed in on both sides. I stayed quiet, letting the posts speak for themselves. Jasmine's friends escalated. They crafted a narrative in which I was an abusive narcissist who had financially manipulated a young woman. They began using a hashtag about financial abuse in the comments. Meanwhile, my friends began to post their own receipts. A photo of Jasmine's story from 2 months earlier where she had written, "I never have to pay for anything because I am just that woman," and a video from a platform where she had said, "Always forget your wallet and hint at what you want. If he does not offer to buy it, he is not the one." Hearing those words recorded in her own voice changed the conversation. People who had not known what to think suddenly had context. The next day, I received a direct message from a woman named Latoya, who introduced herself as Jasmine's roommate. She wrote, "We do not know each other, but I think you should be aware of something. Jasmine has not paid rent for 2 months. She owes me and our other roommate a total of $3,200. She keeps saying her business is about to take off, but when I look at her posts, now I understand where the appearance comes from. I'm sorry this happened to you." I called her. She spoke carefully, like someone who had weighed the consequences. She said she bought a $2,000 bag last month while telling us she was close to a big client. We were about to give her notice. Now I see what was paying for those dinners. I asked if she would be willing to confirm that publicly if it came to it. She said, yes. Jasmine kept pushing her side. She appeared on her friend Keisha's small podcast, the one she sometimes filmed in a living room in a neighborhood outside Dallas. She told the host and the audience that I was controlling because I kept records, that the Venmo request was financial violence. She repeated that she had never asked for anything and that I had offered. She said her post about men who are not financially stable was taken out of context. She said she had been traumatized by my public humiliation. Clips of that conversation began to circulate on multiple platforms. The comments grew more critical, not of me, but of the contradictions. One person wrote, "She never asked, but she posted a tutorial about getting men to pay for everything without asking." Another wrote, "Keeping receipts after being publicly called inadequate is not abuse. It is self-defense." It was no longer a debate about a fancy dinner. It was a question of pattern and intent. Then I received an email from human resources at my company asking me to come in for a conversation. My stomach sank. I imagined worst-case scenarios because I know how these things go online. People can lose jobs over a misinterpreted screenshot. I walked into the small conference room with neutral gray walls and a glass door, and Patricia, the human resources manager, sat across from me with a folder and a faint smile. "We received a complaint," she said. "It alleges harassment and financial abuse conducted publicly on social media. I am supposed to investigate." She paused, then flipped through printouts. I saw the posts. "Is this about a public Venmo request for half the expenses of a relationship?" I nodded. I handed her printouts and screenshots. Jasmine's initial post, the comments, the payments I had made, the way I had phrased my request. Patricia read them carefully, then leaned back and said, "This is the most absurd complaint I have seen this quarter. You are fine. Please keep personal disputes off work time and work channels." I said, "Understood." That same afternoon, I received an email from an address that claimed to be from a law office. The document attached was titled "Cease and Desist." It accused me of defamation and emotional distress. It demanded that I remove the Venmo request and pay $5,000 in damages to Jasmine. I forwarded the email to my cousin Maurice, who is an attorney in North Carolina. He called me immediately and laughed for a long moment. "Corey, this is not on legal letterhead," he said. "It is a generic Gmail account. The signature block is a placeholder. Also, truth is an absolute defense against defamation. Keep everything documented." I posted the cease and desist on my story and wrote, "Now I am receiving legal threats from a free email account. The entitlement is remarkable. Still waiting on that Venmo payment." Within hours, the email account disappeared. That night, Leon came by my place with takeout, and we sat on my couch with the television on mute while my phone buzzed across the coffee table, glowing every few seconds. Leon said, "Do you think this ends here?" I said, "I do not know. I would like it to end." He said, "Then be prepared. People who rely on appearances do not accept exposure easily." I nodded. Then we ate in silence for a while. When he left, he said, Remember who you are. You were generous. You were patient. You did not deserve to be humiliated for having a limit. A week later, I received a message from a man named Darnell. He introduced himself as Jasmine's former boyfriend. He wrote, "I have been waiting 2 years for someone to see the pattern. Can we meet?" We met for beers at a clean neighborhood place in Midtown. Darnell arrived with a thin folder and the face of someone who had learned to laugh, so he would not clench his jaw at his memories. He said, "She did the same thing to me. I paid for everything for a year and a half. The day I said no to a $5,000 vacation, she told people I was financially abusive." He opened the folder and slid over printed screenshots. Messages where Jasmine referred to men as walking cash machines. Messages where she laid out strategies for extracting gifts without appearing to ask. At the top of the pile was a group chat titled "Securing the Bag," filled with 12 women, including Jasmine, discussing how to find men to pay for their expenses. One message from Jasmine read, "If he is not spending at least $500 a month, move on. Men are replaceable. Your lifestyle is not." My hands tightened on the edge of the folder. Darnell said, "I was quiet for too long. Seeing you stand up for yourself made me realize I should have done the same. You are not crazy. None of this is normal." I asked if he would allow me to share a few screenshots, with names blurred. He said, "Yes. Use what you need." That evening, I made one final post. I shared 3 screenshots from the "Securing the Bag" chat with the names of the other women blurred out. The worst one was from a week before Jasmine called me financially inadequate. In it, Jasmine wrote, "He is starting to push back on expensive dinners. Time to find the next one. This one is good for about $800 a month now." A friend responded, "Maintain until you find a replacement. Never leave money on the table." Jasmine replied, "True. I will keep him for another month and then leave." My caption read, "I was not financially inadequate. I was the current cash machine. I am glad my services are no longer required. If you are funding someone's lifestyle while being called inadequate, you deserve better." The reaction was intense. Jasmine's friends turned on her. Latoya commented publicly, "This explains why you have not paid rent in 2 months, but have new designer items. We are finished." Tanisha, who had defended Jasmine loudly at first, unfollowed her and wrote, "I have been defending someone who used all of us. I paid for her drinks last week because she said she was waiting on client payments. I feel sick." The group chat leaked in full elsewhere. It became apparent that some women in that chat were using company events to meet men and solicit expensive gifts. Within days, 3 of them lost their jobs. Jasmine posted a tearful video saying that Darnell and I were bitter, that we resented independent women, that the screenshots were fabricated, but the timestamps, the profile images, and the consistent writing styles made it clear they were real. Her accounts began to lose followers. Prospective clients declined to hire her. A reputation based on confidence had curdled into something else. While all of that swirled online, the Venmo request remained unpaid. It began to collect comments like an odd local monument. People posted their own itemized lists of relationship expenses. It turned into a trend where people shared an image of their unpaid, emotional invoices, as they called them, for humor and catharsis. I watched with a mix of disbelief and relief. I had not intended to ignite anything beyond my immediate circle, but the larger conversation was clearly about boundaries and fairness. One afternoon, I took a long walk through the park near my apartment to get away from the constant notifications. It was a clear day. Parents pushed strollers. A man taught his son how to throw a baseball. On a bench a few yards away, 2 women debated whether emotional labor should be itemized. "How would you even begin?" one of them asked. "I'm not saying it is not real," the other said. "I'm saying it is not a credit card charge. If you believe in that kind of contribution, you still need to be honest about who is paying rent, who is paying for dinner, and who is paying attention." I kept walking. That evening, I called my mother. She follows my social media, and she had seen enough to understand the general outline. She said, "Good for you, honey. Your father did something similar once before he met me. Some people want traditional providing with none of the traditional respect. You avoided a long-term disaster." Then she added, $6,400 in 8 months is a lot. You could revisit your budget." I laughed and said, "Thank you, Mom." Over the next week, the initial firestorm cooled into a set of smaller conversations. I received messages from dozens of men and women who had been in uneven relationships and felt too embarrassed to tell their friends. One person wrote, "I thought generosity meant silence. I realize now it means clarity." Another wrote, "I paid for everything for 6 months and was called cheap when I could not afford a luxury resort. Seeing your receipts gave me courage." I answered as many messages as I could. I did not think a single public post solves private patterns, but it can be a mirror. I created a small group chat with some of those men called Recovering Cash Machines. We shared red flags without anger. A partner who never offers. A partner who expresses disdain when a boundary is mentioned. A partner who uses public pressure to extract private concessions. We did not wallow. We told the truth. We laughed when we could. It helped to understand I was not alone. Meanwhile, I reworked my budget. The $800 a month I had effectively spent on Jasmine now went into savings. I bought myself a gaming computer I had been postponing in the name of saving for special dinners. I tidied my closet and realized how much of my wardrobe Jasmine had thrown out in the name of style. I repurchased a perfectly good plain jacket I liked because it felt like reclaiming something simple. A few weeks later, I went on a coffee date with a woman named Maya. We met at a cafe near the University District because she liked the pastries there, and she said she would recommend the lemon bar if I asked. She was an elementary school art teacher who did not own a handbag with a famous logo, and when the check arrived, she reached immediately for her wallet. "Let's split it," she said. Her tone was light, like the most obvious thing in the world. I nearly cried from relief. We talked about her students, my job, her favorite public mural in Atlanta, and whether the library downtown was better than the one in her neighborhood. She was curious and kind. After our third date, she sent me links to a picnic basket and a blanket and said, "Would you be interested in a picnic this weekend? We can bring fruit and sandwiches and sit by the water. We can leave our phones in the bag." I said yes. When Saturday came, she arrived with sliced strawberries and a small speaker that played jazz at low volume. We ate and talked about our families. Then she looked at me and said, "It must have been difficult having a conversation with the entire internet." I said, "Yes." She asked, "Do you feel any guilt about the Venmo request?" I said no. I feel regret that it had to be public for it to be acknowledged. But I did not feel guilt. I paid for nearly everything for 8 months. When I set a boundary, I was publicly humiliated. The request was direct and accurate. She nodded and said, "I understand. I think clarity is kindness." Then she smiled and said, "I would not have asked for that restaurant anyway. It is excessively expensive." Around this time, Jasmine unblocked me and sent one final message. It said, "I hope you are happy. You destroyed my life over money. I loved you, and you humiliated me. You and Darnell are pathetic and cannot handle strong women. Enjoy your boring and cheap life." I replied, "I am happy. I hope you find peace. The Venmo request remains active if you want to settle it." She blocked me again. I let it rest. One evening, Calvin and I grabbed an early dinner after work in a neighborhood that had a good view of the sunset. He said, "Do you think you will ever take down the request?" I said no. It is a record. It is not revenge. It is part of the history of how I learned to insist on fairness. He said, "Sometimes history needs a case number." I laughed and said, "Then that is the case number." In the weeks that followed, I did not check Jasmine's pages. LaToya told me that Jasmine had moved back in with her parents in Ohio. She told them she is taking a break from a toxic city environment. LaToya said, "But the truth is she cannot afford rent, and she burned every bridge she had here." I thank LaToya for telling me and wish her the sort of calm that comes when a difficult roommate moves out. At work, life returned to normal. I reset passwords. I walked 3 different people through the process of clearing their browser cache, and I helped the department lead pick a new laptop. Patricia saw me once in the hallway and said, "Everything quiet?" I said, "Quiet enough." She said, "Good." Then she added, "Your documentation was very thorough." I smiled and said, "Thank you." On a Saturday morning, I drove to visit my parents outside the city. My father was building a wooden planter box in a backyard, and I held the level while he drilled in the screws. He said, "Your mother told me everything. You did not do anything wrong." I said, "I know." He said, "It does not always feel like you know when thousands of strangers have an opinion." I said, "That is true." He said, "Remember, generosity is measured by intention and capacity, not by receipts." But receipts matter when someone decides to rewrite history. My mother made shrimp and grits and insisted I take leftovers. Before I left, she said, "You will meet someone who recognizes how you love. It will not be about the bill. It will be about being partners." I hugged her and promised to call when I got home. In the car, on the way back to the city, I thought about 8 months of meals, the way Jasmine's smile felt like gratitude in the beginning and performance by the end, and the relief of quiet honesty across a picnic blanket with Maya. There are details I have not shared publicly because they belong to me, not to the audience. Small moments of tenderness that do not vanish just because the person later disappointed you. Daily routines that made me better. Ways I ignore my own inner voice because I wanted something to be true. The Venmo request did not erase those things. It simply placed the financial facts in plain view. If someone calls you inadequate for having a boundary, clarity helps you breathe again. A month after the last of the chaos, I got a message from Darnell. He wrote, "I met someone who splits the check and laughs easily." I wrote back, "I am happy for you." He replied, "We live and learn." I sent him a simple, "We do." I sometimes think about how short the distance is between a generous habit and a pattern that drains you. The difference is not the number on the bill. The difference is whether gratitude exists, whether reciprocity appears in the ways a person is able to offer it, whether your limit is welcomed as part of knowing you. If those things do not exist, money becomes the stage for every other missing piece. When I am tempted to explain myself further to strangers online, I stop and imagine the picnic blanket, the sound of distant laughter in the park, the way Maya smiled when she said, "Clarity is kindness." I think of the weeks when I nearly forgot what it felt like to be treated fairly, and I guard that feeling like something valuable. Because it is. A few nights ago, I scrolled past the Venmo request and saw a new comment from someone I did not know. This made me tally my last relationship. Not for revenge, for understanding. Another person wrote, "After I did the math, I realized I was angry at myself more than at him. I apologized to myself and moved forward." I clicked the heart on both comments and put my phone away. That is what remains after the drama fades. The numbers, the lessons, the quiet decision that you will not make yourself small so that someone else can spend your money and then call you names for not providing more. The city is the same, the skyline is the same, the office is the same, and my budget spreadsheet is a little cleaner. The things I miss from that relationship are real, but so is the relief of being done. On our fourth date, Maya and I returned to that cafe near the university. The barista smiled at us as if he recognized a pattern, and perhaps he did. When the check came, I reached for it, and she touched my hand lightly and said, "We agreed we would take turns." I smiled and leaned back. "You were right," I said. She paid, and we left a good tip, and we walked out into a city evening that smelled faintly of rain. Later that night, as I brushed my teeth, my phone buzzed. It was a notification that always makes me smile, not because I expected a change, but because it reminds me of the line I drew in clear ink. Your request to Jasmine for $6,427 is still pending. I rinsed my mouth, set the phone on the nightstand, and turned out the light. If there is anything I have learned, it is that you can be generous and still require respect. You can love people and still insist on truth. You can remember beautiful moments and still keep receipts. And you can watch the sun come up the morning after the internet has shouted your name, make your coffee, tie your shoes, and walk out into a day that belongs fully to you. In the months since it all began, that is what I have done. Went to work, made dinner, called my parents, met friends for trivia night, jogged on quiet streets, and let the noise die down on its own. The people who wanted to misunderstand me moved on to the next spectacle. The people who knew me stayed. The bank account number in the savings column grew from 3 figures to 4 to 5, and I slept more soundly. I have not heard from Jasmine again. I imagine she is rebuilding, perhaps learning, perhaps not. That is not my business anymore. The last part of the story is simply this. A person asked me to violate my own boundary for the sake of appearance. I said no. She tried to humiliate me. I answered with facts. The facts stood, and then life went on, which is the ordinary miracle I am most grateful for. And so I keep the request as a small monument to audacity and clarity, and I keep walking forward, toward work that matters, friends who tell the truth, and a woman who says, "Let us split it, not because she needs to keep score, but because she respects the arithmetic of care. That arithmetic is simple. Give what you can, receive with gratitude, and do not let anyone convince you that boundaries make you unkind. If you enjoyed this story, please like, comment, and share this video with your friends. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a powerful story drop.